The aroma of garlic and thyme filled my cramped Chicago apartment kitchen as I put the finishing touches on what I knew was my best dish yet. Steam rose from the cast-iron skillet where perfectly seared chicken rested atop a bed of wild rice pilaf, garnished with fresh herbs from my tiny windowsill garden. 3 years of culinary school, 2 years working double shifts at mediocre restaurants, and countless nights perfecting recipes had led to this moment, my family's annual Thanksgiving gathering, where I'd finally prove I belonged in the food industry. The November wind rattled my apartment windows as I carefully plated each portion. Outside, the Chicago skyline glowed against the gray afternoon sky, and I could hear the distant hum of traffic on Lakeshore Drive. My hands trembled slightly as I arranged the final garnish. This wasn't just dinner. This was my declaration that I was more than the family failure everyone thought I was. "Jordan, you better not be making anything too fancy," my cousin Brett called from the living room, his voice carrying that familiar condescending tone I'd grown to despise. "Remember what happened at Cousin Lisa's wedding when you tried to make that weird soup?" I gripped the counter, knuckles white against the worn formica. That weird soup had been a carefully crafted butternut squash bisque with brown butter and sage. It was actually delicious, but Brett had convinced everyone it was too pretentious before they'd even tasted it. Just like he'd done with my career choice, my decision to go to culinary school, and pretty much every aspiration I'd ever shared with my family. The apartment felt smaller with 8 relatives crammed inside, their conversations mixing with the sounds of football on my old television. I could smell Aunt Patricia's store-bought green bean casserole warming in my oven alongside Uncle Mike's contribution of frozen pumpkin pie from the grocery store. No one questioned their choices, but here I was, stressed about a dish I'd spent hours perfecting. 5 minutes, I announced, wiping sweat from my forehead despite the chilly weather outside. My cousin Derek appeared in the kitchen doorway, beer in hand. "Smells good, Jordan. What is it this time?" "Herb-crusted chicken with wild rice pilaf and roasted root vegetables," I said, unable to hide the pride in my voice. "The chicken is free-range from that farm market on Division Street, and I made the herb blend myself." Brett pushed past Derek, nearly knocking the beer from his hand. "Jesus, Jordan, it's just chicken. Why do you always have to make everything so complicated?" He reached for one of my carefully plated portions and took a large bite before I could stop him. My heart pounded as I watched his expression. For a moment, I thought I saw surprise, maybe even appreciation cross his face. The chicken was perfectly seasoned, the rice had just the right amount of bite, and the vegetables were caramelized to perfection. Even in my small kitchen with limited equipment, I'd created something special. Then Brett's face twisted into that familiar smirk. "Your food is trash, Jordan. I don't know why you keep pretending you're some kind of chef." He laughed, loud enough for everyone in the living room to hear. "Save your money and give up this cooking thing already. You're never going to make it." The words hit me like a physical blow. The kitchen suddenly felt stifling, the November heat from the oven mixing with my burning embarrassment. I looked down at the plates I'd so carefully arranged, and they seemed to mock me now. 3 years of school, thousands of dollars in debt, countless nights practicing knife skills until my fingers bled, all of it dismissed with a cruel laugh. "Brett, come on," Derek said quietly, but his defense felt weak, obligatory. "What? I'm just being honest. Look at this place." Brett gestured around my small kitchen with its mismatched appliances and worn countertops. Jordan's 26 and living like a college student, chasing some fantasy about being the next Gordon Ramsay. Someone needs to give a reality check. My throat tightened and I could feel the familiar sting of tears threatening. This always happened. Every family gathering, every attempt to share my passion, ended with Brett tearing me down while everyone else stood by and let it happen. I thought about my culinary school classmates who were already working in prestigious restaurants, building their careers while I served overpriced appetizers to tourists and came home to practice in my tiny kitchen. "You know what, Brett?" I said, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I should just." My phone rang, cutting through the tension. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, and normally I would have let it go to voicemail, but I needed an escape from the suffocating weight of my family's judgment. "Hello," I answered, stepping toward the window. "Is this Jordan Martinez?" The voice was crisp, professional, with just a hint of a Chicago accent. "Yes, speaking." "This is Jennifer Walsh, event coordinator for Mayor Harrison's office. I got your number from Chef Williams at Meridian Restaurant. He spoke very highly of your work." My heart skipped. Chef Williams had been my instructor for advanced techniques, and he'd mentioned that some of his former students had gone on to work high-profile events. But I never imagined. "I'm calling because we have an urgent situation," Jennifer continued. Our caterer for tomorrow night's charity gala just had a kitchen fire. We need someone who can handle a sophisticated menu for 200 guests on short notice. Chef Williams said you might be available. I glanced back at my family, still gathered around the television, Brett now loudly explaining to everyone why my dreams were unrealistic. The plates of food I'd made sat untouched on the counter. Tomorrow night? I managed to ask, my mind racing. I know it's incredibly short notice, but the event is crucial. It's raising money for the new community center on the south side. We can discuss compensation, of course. Would you be interested in meeting tonight to go over the details? Through the window, I could see the lights of downtown Chicago twinkling in the early evening darkness. Somewhere out there was the mayor's office, political figures, community leaders, a world I'd only dreamed of entering. And here was my chance, falling into my lap like something out of a movie. Yes, I said, my voice growing stronger. Yes, I'm very interested. Excellent. Can you meet me at City Hall in an hour? Bring a portfolio if you have one, and any references from your recent work. After I hung up, I stood frozen for a moment, phone still in my hand. The kitchen around me looked different somehow, not cramped and inadequate, but intimate and full of possibility. The dishes I'd prepared sat waiting, and suddenly I didn't care whether my family appreciated them or not. Brett was still holding court in the living room, explaining to anyone who'd listen why pursuing dreams was a waste of time. But his words felt distant now, like background noise that no longer had power over me. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the leather portfolio I'd assembled after graduation, photos of dishes I'd created, letters of recommendation from my instructors, certificates from culinary competitions I'd entered. It had been sitting in my closet for months, gathering dust while I worked at restaurants that didn't challenge me and came home to family members who didn't believe in me. Where are you going? Derek asked as I grabbed my coat. I have a meeting, I said, unable to keep the smile from my face. What kind of meeting? Before I could answer, Brett appeared again. Let me guess, another interview at some chain restaurant that's going to reject you? I looked at him for a long moment, this person who had spent years trying to make me feel small. Then I thought about the voice on the phone, professional and urgent, offering me exactly the kind of opportunity I'd been working toward. Actually, I said, slipping on my coat, I have a meeting with the mayor's office. They want me to cater an event tomorrow night. The room went quiet. Brett's smirk faltered. Very funny, Jordan, he said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. I'm not joking. I picked up my portfolio and headed for the door. Enjoy the chicken. It's actually quite good, despite what you think. As I walked out into the November evening, leaving behind my untouched plates and my family's shocked faces, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The absolute certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, heading exactly where I needed to go. The city stretched out before me, full of possibility and promise, and for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. City Hall at night was a different beast entirely. The imposing limestone facade, usually bustling with daytime crowds, stood majestically against the Chicago skyline. I climbed the steps with my portfolio clutched tightly, my breath forming small clouds in the crisp November air. Inside, security guards directed me through marble corridors that echoed with each footstep, past portraits of former mayors and city officials who seemed to watch my progress with solemn approval. Jennifer Walsh met me in a conference room on the 4th floor. She was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 30s, with short auburn hair and the kind of focused energy that comes from managing high-stakes events. She wore a navy blazer over dark jeans, professional but approachable, and I immediately felt more at ease. Jordan, thank you for coming so quickly, she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. I have to be honest, when I called Chef Williams looking for recommendations, yours was the only name he gave me without hesitation. He said, and I quote, Jordan has something special. Give them a real opportunity and they'll exceed every expectation. My chest swelled with pride. Chef Williams had been tough on all his students, never one for empty praise. Hearing that he'd recommended me so enthusiastically felt like vindication for all those late nights perfecting knife cuts and memorizing flavor profiles. Tell me about your experience, Jennifer said, opening a laptop and pulling up what looked like event planning documents. I opened my portfolio, glad I'd kept it updated despite my recent discouragement. I graduated from Chicago Culinary Institute 3 years ago, and I've been working primarily in upscale casual dining since then. But what I'm really passionate about is creating memorable experiences through food, dishes that tell a story and bring people together. I showed her photos of a dinner party I'd catered for my culinary school professor's anniversary, a 6-course tasting menu that showcased seasonal ingredients from local farms. Then pictures from a pop-up dinner I'd organized in my friend's backyard, where I'd served 30 guests a carefully curated meal highlighting different neighborhoods of Chicago through their signature dishes. "This is impressive work," Jennifer said, studying each image carefully. "The presentation is restaurant quality, but there's something more personal here. It feels authentic." "That's exactly what I'm going for," I said, feeling my confidence grow. "I believe food should reflect not just technical skill, but the community it serves. When I cook, I'm thinking about the people who will eat it, the story I want to tell, the experience I want to create." Jennifer leaned back in her chair. "Let me tell you about tomorrow's event. It's the annual charity gala for the Southside Community Center. We're expecting 200 guests, including city council members, local business leaders, community activists, and major donors. The goal is to raise funds for the new facility, which will provide after-school programs, job training, and community resources for one of our most underserved neighborhoods." She pulled up a floor plan on her laptop. "The event is at the Palmer House Hilton in the Grand Ballroom. We had contracted with Millennium Catering, they're one of the biggest firms in the city, but their kitchen had a grease fire this afternoon. They can't fulfill the contract, and every other major caterer is already booked for Saturday night." My mind raced as I processed the information. 200 guests at the Palmer House. This was exactly the kind of high-profile event that could transform a career. But it was also terrifying. One mistake in front of the mayor and Chicago's power brokers could end my dreams before they really began. "What kind of menu were you planning?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Something elegant but not pretentious. We want to honor the community we're supporting. This isn't about showing off with expensive ingredients. It's about creating something beautiful and memorable that reflects the values of the project we're funding." I felt a spark of excitement. This wasn't just about fancy food for wealthy people, it was about using my skills to support something meaningful. What if we created a menu that actually celebrates the Southside community? Elevated versions of dishes that have cultural significance, using the best local ingredients we can source. Jennifer's eyes lit up. "Tell me more." I pulled out a notebook I always carried and started sketching ideas. "For the appetizer course, what about a deconstructed Harold's fried chicken buttermilk brine chicken breast served on a small waffle with hot honey and pickled vegetables? It pays homage to one of the South Side's most beloved restaurants while elevating the presentation." "I love it. What else?" "For the main course, we could do short ribs slow braised in a bourbon and coffee reduction, served with creamy grits made with locally sourced corn and seasonal roasted vegetables. It's comfort food with sophistication, honoring the soul food tradition that's so important to the community." Jennifer was taking notes now, nodding enthusiastically. "And dessert?" "Sweet potato bread pudding with bourbon caramel sauce and candied pecans. Again, it's a dish with deep cultural roots but presented in a way that feels special and celebratory." We spent the next hour going over logistics, vendor contacts, kitchen access, staffing needs, budget constraints. Jennifer had connections with preferred suppliers, and she assured me the Palmer House kitchen staff would be available to assist. The budget was generous enough to source quality ingredients without cutting corners. "There's one more thing," Jennifer said as we wrapped up. "Mayor Harrison will be giving a speech during dinner, and there will likely be media coverage. This event gets attention both for the cause and for the vendors involved. If you do well tomorrow night, it could open a lot of doors." My hands trembled slightly as I closed my portfolio. This was the opportunity I'd been working toward without even realizing it. Not just a catering gig, but a chance to demonstrate my skills on a stage that could change everything. "I need to ask," I said. "Why are you taking a chance on me? You could have gone with a larger company, someone with more experience handling events this size." Jennifer smiled. "Honestly? Because Chef Williams was so adamant, and because when I looked at your portfolio, I saw exactly what we need for this event. Millennium Catering would have given us perfectly competent food that nobody would remember. You're offering something with soul, something that connects to the community we're trying to support. That's worth the risk." I walked back through those marble corridors with my head spinning. Outside, Chicago's November night felt crisp and full of possibility. Lake Michigan stretched dark beyond the city lights, and I could hear the distant sound of traffic on Lake Shore Drive mixing with the wind off the water. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Brett says you're lying about the mayor thing. Where did you really go?" I smiled and typed back, "Tell Brett I'll send him pictures tomorrow night." The drive home took me through downtown, past restaurants I dreamed of working in and hotels I'd imagined catering events for. Tomorrow I'd be cooking in one of them, not as an assistant or line cook, but as the head chef responsible for an entire event. The weight of that responsibility was both thrilling and terrifying. Back in my apartment, my family was gone, but they'd left the dishes I'd prepared earlier sitting on the counter, barely touched. I tasted the chicken that Brett had dismissed so cruelly. It was still delicious, perfectly seasoned and cooked with care. His words echoed in my memory, "Your food is trash." Tomorrow I'd prove him wrong in front of 200 people, including the mayor of Chicago. I spent the rest of the evening creating detailed prep lists, researching local suppliers who could deliver quality ingredients on short notice, and mentally rehearsing every step of the menu. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of perfectly plated dishes and applauding crowds. When I woke before dawn on Saturday morning, I felt different somehow, not like the person who'd been dismissed by family members and overlooked by employers, but like someone who belonged in professional kitchens, someone whose food deserved to be celebrated. The November sun was just beginning to rise over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I made coffee and stood at my window, looking out at the city that was about to give me the biggest opportunity of my life. By tonight, everything would be different. One way or another, I was about to find out exactly what I was capable of. The Palmer House kitchen at 6 in the morning was a cathedral of stainless steel and possibility. Industrial ovens lined the walls like altarpieces, their surfaces gleaming under the bright fluorescent lights. The prep tables stretched out before me like blank canvases, and the walk-in coolers hummed with quiet efficiency. I stood in the center of it all, taking in the scale of the operation that would soon be mine to command. "You must be Jordan," said a voice behind me. I turned to see a tall woman in chef's whites, her graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. "I'm Chef Sandra Morrison, executive chef here. Jennifer Walsh asked me to make sure you have everything you need." The relief that washed over me was immediate. Having an experienced chef on my side could make the difference between success and disaster. "Thank you so much. I have to admit, this is bigger than anything I've done before." Chef Morrison smiled. "We've all been there. The key is organization and delegation. Lucky for you, I've assigned 2 of my best line cooks to help with prep, and our pastry chef volunteered to handle your bread pudding dessert. They're good people, treat them well and they'll make you look like a star." The morning flew by in a blur of controlled chaos. Maria, the pastry chef, proved to be a perfectionist who elevated my sweet potato bread pudding concept beyond anything I could have achieved alone. The 2 line cooks, James and Patricia, worked with the kind of efficiency that comes from years in professional kitchens, turning my ingredient lists into beautifully prepped components with military precision. By noon, we had 40 pounds of short ribs braising in bourbon coffee reduction, 300 pieces of chicken brining in buttermilk, and enough sweet potatoes roasted to perfection for 200 individual bread puddings. The kitchen smelled like a symphony of caramelized onions, coffee, and warm spices. "Looking good, chef," James said, wiping sweat from his forehead. The title felt strange but wonderful. Chef, not just cook or assistant, but the person responsible for making it all come together. I was plating samples for a final tasting when my phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the screen, and despite the pressure of the moment, I answered. "Jordan, where the hell are you?" His voice sounded stressed, almost panicked. "I'm at the Palmer House, prepping for tonight's event." What's wrong?" "It's Dad. He had chest pains this morning and Mom took him to Northwestern Memorial. The doctors are running tests," but his voice broke. "Brett's been calling everyone, trying to get the family together. He said you'd want to know, even though you've been acting weird about some imaginary catering job." The world stopped. My father, gruff, hard-working, the man who'd raised me to believe that dreams without action were just fantasies, was in the hospital while I stood in this gleaming kitchen pursuing the biggest opportunity of my career. "How bad is it?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "We don't know yet. But Jordan, the whole family's here. You should come." I looked around the kitchen where my team was working so diligently, at the prep that represented hours of careful planning, at the opportunity that might never come again. Then I thought about my father, who'd worked double shifts at the construction company to pay for my culinary school, even when he didn't understand why I needed formal training to learn something he thought should come naturally. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said. Chef Morrison looked up from the grill where she was testing heat levels. "Everything okay?" "Family emergency. My father's in the hospital." The words felt surreal. "I need to go, but I don't know when I'll be back." The kitchen went quiet. James and Patricia exchanged glances, and Maria looked up from the bread pudding molds she'd been arranging. "Jordan," Chef Morrison said gently, "I understand family comes first. But this event starts in 6 hours. If you leave now, we can probably pull together something basic from our regular banquet menu, but she didn't need to finish. This opportunity, this chance to prove myself on a stage that could transform my career, would disappear. Jennifer Walsh would remember me as the chef who abandoned her event at the last minute. The mayor's office would never trust me with another contract. My professional reputation would be damaged before it even had a chance to develop. But my father was in the hospital and my family needed me. I know, I said, untying my apron with shaking hands. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. The drive to Northwestern Memorial took forever, Chicago traffic moving with its usual stubborn indifference to human crisis. I sat at red lights thinking about short ribs that would overcook without someone to monitor them, about chicken that needed to be fried at exactly the right temperature, about 200 guests who would eat mediocre hotel food instead of the menu I'd designed to honor their cause. My family had gathered in the cardiac unit waiting room, the same faces from yesterday's Thanksgiving disaster, but transformed by worry. My mother sat hunched in a plastic chair, her face streaked with tears. Brett paced near the windows, for once his usual arrogance replaced by genuine fear. Jordan. Mom stood and hugged me fiercely. I'm so glad you're here. The doctors are still running tests, but they think it might be a minor heart attack. How is he? Can I see him? He's resting now. The cardiologist said the next few hours are critical. She squeezed my hands. He keeps asking for you. He's worried about things he said. About not supporting your dreams enough. My throat tightened. Even facing a health crisis, my father was thinking about me, about the gulf that had grown between us as I'd pursued a career he didn't quite understand. Brett appeared at my shoulder. I'm glad you came, he said quietly. I know I was a jerk yesterday about your cooking thing. This puts everything in perspective. For the next 4 hours, I sat with my family in that sterile waiting room, watching CNN on the mounted television and drinking terrible coffee from vending machines. The doctors came periodically with updates. My father was stable, the damage was minimal, he'd likely make a full recovery with lifestyle changes and medication. As the sun set outside the hospital windows, I thought about the Palmer House kitchen where my team was probably serving my menu to 200 guests without me. I imagined Mayor Harrison giving his speech while servers delivered short ribs I'd braised but would never see plated. I pictured Jennifer Walsh explaining to donors that the chef had experienced a family emergency, professional but disappointed. My phone buzzed with a text from Chef Morrison. Your father okay? Event going smoothly. Team stepped up beautifully. You should be proud of the menu you created. Then another from Jennifer Walsh. Heard about your father. Hope he's doing well. Your team executed flawlessly tonight. Mayor Harrison specifically asked me to get your contact information. We need to talk soon. And then, surprisingly, one more from a number I didn't recognize. This is Mayor Harrison. Jennifer Walsh told me about your family situation. Your team delivered an outstanding meal tonight, and your dedication to family shows the kind of character we need in our city. When your father is feeling better, please call my office. We have opportunities to discuss. I stared at my phone, reading the messages over and over. Somehow, despite my absence, the evening had been a success. My menu had been served, my vision had been realized, and the people who mattered most had taken notice. Good news? Derek asked, noticing my expression. Yeah, I said, slipping the phone back into my pocket. Really good news. At 9 o'clock, the cardiologist finally emerged with a smile. Mr. Martinez is going to be fine. It was a very mild episode, and with proper medication and some lifestyle adjustments, he should have no lasting effects. You can see him now, but just a few at a time. I was the first to enter his room. My father looked smaller than usual against the white hospital sheets, but his eyes were clear and focused when he saw me. Jordan, he said, reaching for my hand. I'm sorry about yesterday. Brett told me what he said to you and I should have stepped in. I should have defended you. Dad, don't worry about that now. No, I need to say this. His grip on my hand tightened. I may not understand everything about your career, but I see how hard you work. I see how much it means to you. And if it's important to you, then it's important to me. I felt tears threatening for the second time in 24 hours. I had a catering job tonight, a big one. But when Derek called, I left to be here with you. You left your job? Jordan, you shouldn't have. It was the right choice, Dad. Family comes first. Besides, I smiled, thinking about the messages on my phone. I think it worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. When I finally left the hospital near midnight, Chicago's streets were quiet except for the occasional taxi carrying late-night revelers home from downtown restaurants and bars. The Palmer house glowed in the distance, and I wondered if any of the evening's guests were still lingering over coffee and conversation, perhaps talking about the food they'd eaten and the chef they'd never met. Tomorrow I'd call Mayor Harrison's office. I'd follow up on whatever opportunities he'd hinted at. I'd build on the success of an evening that had happened without me but because of the foundation I'd laid. But tonight, driving home through the city I loved, with my father recovering and my family reunited by crisis, I felt something more valuable than professional success. I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from making the right choice at the right moment, even when the cost seems too high to bear. Sometimes the most important victories are the ones nobody sees, the moments when character matters more than career, when love proves more valuable than opportunity. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the universe rewards that choice by giving you both. 3 months later, I stood in my new restaurant kitchen, watching the evening prep unfold with the kind of quiet pride that comes from building something from the ground. Jordan's Table occupied a restored brick building in Pilsen, just a few miles from the Southside Community Center that had unknowingly changed my life that November evening. The exposed brick walls held photos of local farmers and suppliers, and the open kitchen design let diners watch the controlled ballet of professional cooking. Chef, the Tribune food critic, just sat down at table 12, called Miguel my sous chef and former line cook from the Palmer House event. He'd followed me when I'd opened 6 weeks ago, bringing the kind of loyalty that meant everything in this industry. I glanced through the pass at table 12, where a woman in her 50s was studying our menu with a focused attention that marked her as more than a casual diner. My stomach fluttered with familiar nerves, but they were good nerves now, the kind that came from knowing I had something worth judging. The menu at Jordan's Table reflected everything I'd learned about connecting with community through food. Our signature dish was still that deconstructed Harold's fried chicken, now refined through months of practice but retaining the soul that had impressed Mayor Harrison's guests. We served elevated comfort food sourced from local farms, honoring Chicago's diverse culinary traditions while pushing boundaries in presentation and technique. "Order up," I called, sliding 2 plates across the pass. The servers moved with practiced efficiency, and I watched the diners' faces as they took their first bites. This never got old, the moment of surprise and delight when people realized they were eating something special. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Walsh. "City Council approved the contract. You'll be catering the summer concert series launch party. 500 guests in Grant Park. Congratulations." 500 guests. In Grant Park. 6 months ago, I'd been struggling to get my family to take my career seriously, and now I was the go-to caterer for major city events. The trajectory still amazed me sometimes. The kitchen door swung open and my father appeared, wearing the kind of uncertain smile he got when venturing into my professional world. Since his heart attack, he'd made an effort to understand my career, visiting the restaurant twice a week and asking detailed questions about everything from food costs to staff management. "Hey Dad. How are you feeling?" "Good. Doctor says my numbers are all normal." He'd lost 15 pounds and started taking evening walks around the neighborhood, changes that had added years to his appearance. "I brought someone who wanted to meet you." Behind him stood a young woman, maybe 16, with bright eyes and the kind of eager nervousness I remembered from my first day in culinary school. "This is Carmen," Dad said. "She's in the after-school program at that community center you helped raise money for. She's interested in cooking." Carmen stepped forward shyly. "Chef Martinez? I've been following your restaurant on Instagram. I love how you explain the stories behind your dishes. I'm hoping to apply to culinary school next year, but my family thinks it's not a practical career." I felt a spark of recognition, the same doubt and familial resistance I'd faced, the same burning passion that refused to be extinguished. "Carmen, let me ask you something. When you cook at home, how does it make you feel?" Her face lit up. "Like I'm creating something that brings people together. Like I'm taking care of people in this really fundamental way. Is that weird?" "Not weird at all. That's exactly how it should feel." I looked around my kitchen, where my team was preparing food that would nourish and delight strangers, creating experiences that might become treasured memories. "Want to see how we do service here? You can shadow Miguel for an hour if you're interested." Carmen's eyes widened. "Really? That would be amazing." As she followed Miguel to the grill station, my father moved beside me. "You're good at this," he said quietly. "At cooking? At inspiring people? At building something that matters." He paused. "I'm proud of you, Jordan." I should have said that a long time ago. Before I could respond, the kitchen door burst open again. This time it was Brett, but he looked different than I remembered, less cocky, more uncertain. His usual swagger had been replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "Jordan? Can I talk to you for a minute? I glanced around the busy kitchen. I've got about 5 minutes before the dinner rush really kicks in. What's up? Brett shifted uncomfortably. I came to apologize. For Thanksgiving, for all the times I dismissed what you were doing. I was wrong. Brett, you don't need to. Yes, I do. He looked directly at me and I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Genuine respect. I lost my job 2 weeks ago. Downsized. And suddenly all that security I thought I had, all those reasons I had for mocking your risky career choices, it all disappeared overnight. He gestured around the restaurant. But look at what you built. You took a chance on something you believed in and you created jobs for other people. You're contributing to the community, you're making something that matters. I was the one living a fantasy, thinking that playing it safe was the same as being smart. The dinner rush was starting and I could feel my team's energy shifting into high gear. But this moment felt important, like the closing of a circle that had been open too long. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know yet. Maybe something creative, something that actually means something to me. I'm thinking about going back to school, maybe studying photography. He smiled ruefully. I know, another impractical art career. But watching what you've accomplished, it made me realize that impractical dreams are often the only ones worth pursuing. The food critic at table 12 had finished her appetizer and was making notes on her phone. Through the kitchen window, I could see the dining room filling with the kind of diverse crowd I'd always hoped to attract: young couples on date nights, families celebrating special occasions, business people unwinding after long days, food enthusiasts seeking new experiences. Order up. Table 6, 2 short ribs, 1 salmon. I called, falling back into the rhythm of service. Brett stepped back toward the door. I'll let you get back to work. But Jordan? Thank you. For showing me what's possible when you stop playing it safe. As the evening progressed, the food critic made her way through most of our menu, taking photos and making detailed notes. Carmen proved to be a natural in the kitchen, asking intelligent questions and picking up techniques quickly. My father sat at the bar, nursing a club soda and talking to other customers about the restaurant with obvious pride. Near the end of service, Miguel approached me with a grin. Chef, table 12 wants to speak with you. The food critic stood as I approached, extending her hand with a warm smile. Jordan Martinez? I'm Patricia Williamson from the Tribune. I have to tell you, this is some of the most exciting food I've eaten in Chicago this year. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. Thank you so much. That means everything coming from you. I'd love to set up a formal interview next week, but I wanted you to know this review is going to be very positive. What you're doing here, the way you're honoring local traditions while pushing culinary boundaries, it's exactly what Chicago's food scene needs. After she left, I stood in the quiet restaurant, my team cleaning and closing around me. The last customers had departed, leaving behind empty plates and the satisfied exhaustion that comes from a successful service. Through the windows, Chicago's lights twinkled in the March evening, the city that had tested me and ultimately embraced me. My phone buzzed with a group text from Derek. Dad's doing great at his checkup today. Doctor says he's healthier than he's been in years. Family dinner Sunday? Jordan, can you bring some of that bread pudding? I smiled, thinking about how different those family gatherings were now. Brett had become one of my biggest supporters, bringing friends to the restaurant and posting about our dishes on social media. My mother had started volunteering at the community center, inspired by the connection between my work and the cause I'd helped support. Even my extended family had come around, realizing that my impractical dreams had built something concrete and valuable. Carmen appeared beside me, still wearing the apron Miguel had lent her. Chef Martinez, thank you for tonight. This is exactly what I want to do with my life. Carmen, let me give you some advice that I wish someone had given me years ago. I turned to face her fully. When people tell you that following your passion isn't practical, remember that passion without skills is just wishful thinking, but skills without passion is just a job. Get the training, put in the work, and don't let anyone convince you that creating something beautiful and meaningful isn't worth doing. She nodded earnestly, and I saw in her eyes the same fire I'd carried through culinary school, through disappointing jobs, through family doubt, through that pivotal November evening when everything had changed. After everyone left, I stood alone in my kitchen, doing the final check that had become ritual. Burners off, coolers properly closed, prep lists ready for tomorrow. The space felt like an extension of myself now, every tool in its place, every system refined through months of service, every detail reflecting the standards I'd worked years to develop. On the wall near my office hung a framed photo from that charity gala, Mayor Harrison shaking hands with Jennifer Walsh, with my short ribs visible on the table behind them. Below it was the Tribune review from my soft opening, and next to that, a thank you card from the community center showing the completed facility my event had helped fund. But the item I was proudest of was a simple handwritten note, framed modestly next to the others. It was from my father, written on his first visit to the restaurant. "Jordan, I always knew you were special, but I didn't understand what that meant until tonight. Watching you in your kitchen, seeing how your team respects you and how your food brings joy to strangers, I finally get it. You didn't just become a chef, you became a leader, an artist, and a pillar of your community. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. Love, Dad." My phone rang, interrupting my reflection. The caller ID showed Chef Morrison from the Palmer House. "Jordan, I hope I'm not calling too late. I have a proposition for you." "Not at all. What's up?" "The Palmer House is launching a new chef residency program. We want to bring in local chefs to take over our fine dining restaurant for month-long runs, featuring their signature menus. You'd be our inaugural chef. Are you interested?" I looked around my restaurant, built from dreams and determination, filled with the kind of authentic community connections I'd always wanted to create. 6 months ago, an offer like this would have seemed impossible. Now it felt like the natural next step in a journey that was just beginning. "Chef Morrison, I'd be honored. When do we start?" As I drove home through Chicago's quiet streets, I thought about that Thanksgiving evening that had started with such pain and humiliation. Brett's cruel laughter echoing in my small kitchen, my family's dismissal of my dreams, the crushing weight of feeling like a failure at 26. But pain, I'd learned, was often just transformation wearing an uncomfortable disguise. That phone call from Jennifer Walsh hadn't been luck, it had been the universe's way of saying I was ready for what came next. Leaving the event to be with my father hadn't been career suicide, it had been the decision that proved my character to the people who mattered most. Sometimes the path to success isn't a straight line. Sometimes it requires you to choose love over ambition, family over opportunity, integrity over advancement. And sometimes, if you make those choices with courage and conviction, the universe rewards you with something better than what you thought you wanted. I pulled into my new apartment complex in Lincoln Park, a far cry from that cramped kitchen where this story had begun. But I still cooked for my family every Sunday, still experimented with new flavors and techniques in my home kitchen, still felt that same electric thrill when someone tasted my food and their eyes lit up with surprise and delight. Tomorrow I'd wake up and do it all again: prep vegetables, manage staff, create experiences that brought people together around shared tables and shared stories. It was work that mattered, work that fed both bodies and souls, work that proved every day that following your passion wasn't impractical at all. It was the only practical choice for someone who understood that life is too short to spend it doing anything less than what sets your heart on fire. As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I could smell garlic and herbs drifting from someone else's kitchen, and it made me smile. Somewhere in Chicago, another home cook was experimenting, another dreamer was perfecting their craft, another story was beginning. The city was full of possibility just like it had always been. The only difference now was that I finally believed I deserved my place in it. And that, more than any review or award or accolade, was the real victory: the moment when you stop asking permission to pursue your dreams and start building the life you always knew you were meant to live. In my kitchen on that November evening, my cousin had laughed and called my food trash. Now, 3 months later, my food was feeding a city, building a community, and proving every day that the only opinion that truly matters is the one that comes from the courage to believe in yourself. Sometimes the last laugh really is the sweetest one of all.